What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, it's my first draft ahead of Game Week 17, where we of course have unlimited free transfers to use and change our team as much as we want. So if you enjoy the video, make sure to give it a like. If you haven't done so already, it's going to take you 2 seconds to hit that subscribe button. Please make sure you do that as well. Before we look at the actual team, I thought we would talk about the yellow card limit. It's not going to dramatically alter how we pick our team, but it is just worth noting. So if you get to 5 yellow cards, you'll serve a 1-match suspension. We've seen players like Dalot, Madison, Tony, they've already served their kind of 1-match suspension because they've got to 5 yellow cards. Now that, some people think it's now increased to 10 from now because we're about to go in the second half of the season. Some people think it increases when we get to game week 19. It only increases when your club has reached 19 games. So for example, Jesus is on this list and Arsenal have played 14 matches. So Jesus and, well, not Jesus himself, but Arsenal have to play 19 matches before that gets increased to 10 yellow cards instead. So with Jesus on 4, if he gets 1 more yellow card in the next few games, he will be suspended, right? There's other teams that have already played like 15 games, for example, like Newcastle. For their players, there's only 4 more matches until that will go up to 10. So it depends on your club. And if you miss out on fixtures because they get postponed or whatever, then it takes a little bit longer to get to that kind of 19 game tally when it goes up to 10 yellow cards. So again, it's not going to dramatically alter how I pick the team, but Gay is obviously suspended for game week 17, so he's not an option. If you did want a cheap defender from Palace, you could still put him in the squad and then look to play him later on, but he can't play in 17. Saliba's a big one. He's only 1 yellow card off. He's also more expensive than Gabriel, so I don't think he's an option for me. Then you got Shah at Newcastle. Obviously, Trippier's been doing really well, but a double up might be on because Newcastle have just been so good. With midfielders, there's no real notable players that are close to a suspension. Saka and Zaha probably the main 2, but they are still 2 yellow cards away from it. Forwards is probably the big one. Jesus, Mitrovic and Harry Kane are all 1 yellow card away from a suspension. So it wouldn't necessarily stop me picking them, but if there's an option that's just as good, who isn't close to a suspension, I would probably lean that way instead. So when I've picked my side, I have kind of paid attention to this, but it hasn't necessarily made me pick certain players just because of the yellow card thing, but it's just something that I have got in the back of my mind. All right, let's start off with defence and goalkeepers first of all. Now, I'm going to go through the usual caveat. I know there's a whole World Cup to come. This is not a 100% locked-in team. We don't have to finalise it until the deadline, which is on the 26th of December. And obviously, as we start getting closer, I'll factor things in like who's injured, who's fit, who's had a nice break, who's gone far into the tournament. For what it's worth, if you finish in the quarterfinals or earlier, you'd have at least 2 weeks or more off before the next Premier League game. How clubs manage that in terms of do they give them a bit of time off, a holiday, etc., we don't know yet, but we won't need to factor that in just yet. This is about getting ideas down and figuring out what there is to think about. So for my team, for example, I already know I've gone quite cheap with my goalkeepers and defenders, so I've got a lot of money to spend on my attack, but do I need that? Is there ways to spend that money when I've already got 2 premiums? Possibly not. So maybe I should actually bulk up that defence and goalkeeper position. So that's the kind of thing I'm going to talk through as we go through it. So I've actually still got Ward and Everson in my team. I wildcarded them in game week 9. As you know, if you've watched the videos, they've been absolutely brilliant. 6 clean sheets in 8. Now, I do not expect for 1 second Leicester to get that many clean sheets in the first 8 games after the World Cup. I also don't necessarily expect them to concede as many goals. They're just in there from a value perspective that they are so cheap. And the fixtures are okay. They're not amazing, but they're okay. So if we have a quick look, from game week 17 to 25, they've actually got to play Newcastle, Liverpool, Spurs, Man United and Arsenal, which is not great. So you really need to be able to spend that money well to warrant their inclusion, right? Because they are just so cheap. The other goalkeeper that I really like the look of is Kepa at 4.5 million. I just think it's a little bit annoying in that he gets injured, so Mendy comes in. So will Potter just stick with Mendy? And what if Kepa's not back for game week 17, but he's fit for 18 or 19? Do we risk that he definitely comes back in and takes the position off of Mendy? I'm just not sure I know enough to say that with 100% certainty that will happen. Like for Man United, if De Gea got injured and Dubravka started playing, I'm almost certain no matter how well Dubravka's played, De Gea will come back in. I don't know about that from Chelsea. If you're a Chelsea fan, let me know. But I think it's hard to tell for anyone right now. But for 4.5, that's a pretty good price, especially when Chelsea's fixtures are so good. Like, man, you're not going to get perfect fixtures, right? We're in the second half of the season. You've got to play difficult teams as well. But from 17 to 25, it's Spurs away, Liverpool away, Man City at home. All the other fixtures, you'd be more than happy to play Kepa in. And obviously, you'd have Ward as your backup goalkeeper anyway. So it might be worth the risk. That's the other goalkeeper that I'm really looking at. Right now, I'm not looking to spend too much more. I don't necessarily know if I want like Pope as well as Trippier as well as another defender, because we've also got their attackers like Almiron and Wilson to think about. So that's where I'm at right now. I've got the 2 Leicester goalkeepers. I'm very tempted to get Kepa. In my defence, I've got Gabriel because I think I need triple Arsenal given they're top of the league. And can they win it? Maybe. Either way, they're going to finish in top 4 and they're a very good side this year. Saliba's on 4 yellows. He's also more expensive than Gabriel. I think Gabriel is just as good, if not slightly better, from set pieces. So he's the one I would get. Ben White is another one if the funds were needed, but they're probably not for me. So Gabriel is who I would go for. I just think from a goal threat perspective, he is better than Ben White. Trippier would play every single game. Then I've got double Newcastle, so Botman and Trippier, and also double Man United, Dalot and Shaw, and they actually rotate pretty nicely. Man United have some good fixtures after the break. I'm still not 100% sure about that defence. I think it's pretty good and getting better, but it can still be got at, as we saw from like the Fulham game, for example, back in game week 16. Villa also scored 3 goals against them as well. So it's not like a certainty for clean sheets, but the fixtures are pretty good. And I would always play Gabriel and Trippier anyway. So if I'm playing 3 at the back, I only have to choose one of Dalot, one of Shaw, one of Botman. Now, if I'm doing that, and I'm very rarely playing both Man United players, I should maybe look elsewhere to someone like Dunk could be an option. Bueno at Wolves is only like, I think 3.8 or 3.9 million. He's very cheap. So I don't know if I go in with a double defence, and if I do get rid of... For Newcastle, I'm kind of okay with it. Man United, maybe not so sure. If I do only stick with one, it would be Dalot. He served his suspension now, and in terms of bonus points, he's pretty good. The only thing to say with Dalot, Man United do want another right-back. Ten Hag wants some competition. It might be that, you know, the new right-back comes in to let Dalot rest in the European competitions and stuff like that, or, you know, cup games or whatever it is. But it could also be that they sign a good enough right-back that he just plays in the Premier League as well. So we'll have to wait and see what happens. If we just take a quick look on the FPL page... Newcastle's trickiest fixtures are probably like, what, game week 19, they play Arsenal away. Well, Man United in that same week, if I just bring them up, they play Bournemouth at home, right? So if I want to play Trippier anyway, because he's just so good, I can do that. And I'd still play Gabriel anyway, because the Arsenal defence is good. But if I want to play Dalot instead of Botman, then I absolutely can for Bournemouth at home. So I don't know if I will go in with 2 double-ups, because once they get tricky fixtures, you then got 2 players to deal with. But I think from a value perspective, they're all pretty good. So Trippier, Gabriel and Dalot would be the main defenders, with Shaw and Botman on the bench who are good options too. And all nice and cheap, under 5 million. So for the first draft, I am currently on a 3-5-2 formation. I'll talk about why I've picked Bruno Fernandes in a second, and obviously how those funds could be used in a different way as well. One of the things with a 3-5-2 is you lose Andreas Pereira, who's obviously a really good bench option, and you have to have a cheap forward instead. Obviously, if you've got lots of team value or you're willing to just spend a bit extra, you could have like a Solanke, for example, just sitting on the bench and, you know, call upon him when you need him. But he's a lot more expensive than Greenwood. Now, he might get you some minutes at times, he might get you the odd goal or assist, but he's not as reliable as an Andreas Pereira. But I don't think, unless double game weeks kind of alter the strategy a little bit, I don't think it's that bad having a third bench player that just doesn't play very often, because we have to remember we've got a second wild card as well. So I'm not against a 3-5-2. Bruno Fernandes has not exactly been set in the FPL world alight this year like he did in his first season. He's probably still got penalties when Ronaldo's not on the pitch, and given everything that's happened recently with Ronaldo, I'm not sure we're going to see him that many more times, if at all, for Man United. But Martial could also take penalties, so that's not a guarantee, but he is absolutely nailed in that team, whether he's playing as a number 10, whether he gets moved to the right or whatever. I think he's a good option, but it would just be a short-term thing for me. So if we come on to the live screen and we go to Man United, so he is 9.8 million, so it's quite expensive for someone that's only got 48 points so far. But Man United do play Forest at home and Bournemouth at home in the first 3 game weeks, so I might have him for those and then look to move him on. My only worry, which I'm already thinking about, is where do you go with those funds in midfield? You'd probably have to downgrade him to someone cheaper and then use those funds to upgrade someone elsewhere. in a different position like defence or forwards, and then that's 2 transfers to do that, right? And is there really a 5th midfielder that I want that's a bit cheaper like Zaha or someone like that? Not right this minute. So that's my worry about Fernandes. It's all well and good getting those 2 really nice game weeks, you know, in the first 3 back, but after that, how do you deal with him? If I don't want to spend that money in the midfield, I could spend it in the forward line, someone like Darwin Nunez, and play 3-4-3. For that, I have to keep an eye on, you know, Luis Diaz, Diogo Jota. What are their minutes and fitness going to be like? Because once they're back, that Liverpool front 3 then, their minutes, apart from maybe Salah, they all go down quite a bit. The reason Nunez is so good right now is there's less competition. They have been back playing a 4-3-3 recently. I don't think they're going to go back to 4-4-2, even when all those players are fit. So if we think that Diaz and Jota are mostly going to play on the left, Nunez can play on that, but he'd probably play down the middle, and then you've got Firmino as well. So I don't know if I want Nunez if those 2 are back. So that's something to consider. The other thing with the Fernandes money is, do you put it into defence instead and get the likes of Cancelo, maybe Trent? I'm just not sure right now about whether I want either of those players, to be honest with you. Obviously, Trent's burnt me a little bit for the first kind of 16 game weeks. Hasn't gone well at all. I don't even know if the fixtures are that good. In the first 5 game weeks after the break, 3 of them are away, Villa, Brentford and Brighton, and 1 of them is Chelsea at home. So unless he can get back to the Trent of old, I'm just not sure he's worth it. And with Cancelo, don't get me wrong, Man City, best defence in the league and all that good stuff. But in the first kind of, 6 game weeks, 17 to 22, they got Spurs away, Man United away and Chelsea away. Now, Man City are good enough to go and win all those games, but I wouldn't put it past them conceding in each of those games as well. So then you're really hoping about the other 3. So is it, given that Bruno Fernandes is just not the asset he once was, it's probably not necessarily worth having him in the team. And it probably is just better to spend that money on Cancelo, save 2.4 million and use that elsewhere, right? From a squad perspective, that's probably better. But again, it comes back to those first 3 fixtures for Man United. Is it worth just taking that gamble, especially when Man City's fixtures are quite difficult? At least 3 of the first 6 are quite difficult. So I'm not quite sure whether I want to go that cheap in defence, but that's why I've got Fernandes right now. Martinelli and Saka, look, Arsenal, you know, top 2 team in the league so far this year. I still think Man City will win it for what it's worth, but they're playing exceptionally well. They're going to score goals in whichever fixtures they've got. Martinelli is too good value to turn down, and Saka's not he's on 3 yellow cards, whereas Jesus is on 4, and Saka's probably on penalty still, so Saka's the one I'd go for. And Salah's going to be my second premium, I think. I wasn't sure about that at first, but Harry Kane's now on 4 yellows. He's also at the World Cup. We'll see how far England go, but I just think Haaland and Salah is probably better than Haaland and Kane right now, so that's why I go for him. Probably not going to be my captain that often. I'll probably stick to Haaland, but I want him in there just in case I need an option, like over the kind of couple of game weeks before, when Haaland was injured, basically. And then Maddison is someone I'm not quite sure about. He is with England for the World Cup squad. We'll obviously see how many minutes he gets. I'm not expecting him to play that much, to be honest with you, because we just don't usually play with a number 10, and he's not going to play on the wings, I don't think. But Leicester's fixtures, like I already spoke about, they're quite good after the first 2. So the other option, if I don't want him straight away for Newcastle and Liverpool, is Zaha. Keep him for Fulham and Bournemouth, and then before he plays Spurs, Chelsea, Newcastle, Man United all in a row, switch him to Maddison. So a lot of that will come down to how many other transfers I need to make for this team. The reason that I've put the first draft together with Maddison is to make sure that I've got enough money to spend on the rest of the squad, because Zaha's obviously a little bit cheaper. And if I think that Maddison could go up in price, I would obviously have to give myself a bit of leeway and downgrade somewhere else. So I'm pretty confident that Salah, Martinelli and Saka will be part of my Game Week 17 squad. You know, fitness and stuff out of the, you know, as long as they're fully fit. The only real ones are Maddison. Do I go for Zaha instead? And do I really want to risk going for Bruno Fernandes? But I don't know, with that second wildcard, I feel like you can just take a bit more of a risk if you want to. And then up front, it's fairly standard. I've gone for Haaland, right? He has to be in the team as long as he's fit. The only way he's being sold is if he's confirmed out for a long period of time. And although I've just spoken about the fixtures not being great for Cancelo, he can score against absolutely anyone. Obviously, we're not worried about clean sheets and stuff like that with him. What will be interesting, right? And I'm kind of thinking about this like almost live as I record this, is their trickier fixtures are in game weeks 19, 20 and 22. So 19, 20 and 22. We got Brentford away, Brighton away for Liverpool, and then Wolves away. So it's not necessarily that much better for Salah. So I think even in those harder fixtures, we might look to Haaland. So what was it? 19, 20 and 22. So he's got In 19, it is Chelsea away. Spurs have got Palace away. So it doesn't really get that much better for the other team. So either way, Haaland is definitely going to be in and probably going to be captain for the first 5 to 6 game weeks no matter what. And then I've gone for Wilson because I just think the way Newcastle are playing, it's a team that I want to make sure I'm doubled or tripled up on because I've only had Trippier recently. Again, he is a bit injury prone, so that's a worry, but I don't expect him to get too many minutes over the World Cup. England usually only play with one forward. That will be Harry Kane. And even when Isak comes back, and even if Almiron's still fit and St. Maximin is fit, I think Wilson is going to always be starting for Newcastle and they'll work everything else in around him and he should keep penalties as well. And he's a pretty good price. I think if I was looking for other forwards, Mitrovic is on 4 yellows, Jesus is on 4 yellows. I will probably avoid them. I could see Solanke staying in my team possibly because he's still so cheap. So if I decide to distribute the funds a little bit more and I want to play 3-4-3 with cheap forward, he probably still is the one that I would go for. And there is rumours that Bielsa might become the new Bournemouth manager, so that might make them even more attacking, so that could be interesting to see. And obviously Darwin Núñez is always going to be at the back of my mind because if he plays, he's always going to get pretty decent chances. So it's kind of interesting because this team isn't a huge difference to my current one. Like I've got Haaland, I've got Saka, Martinelli, Salah, Trippier, Ward as well, so 6 of the starting 11 I already have in my team, but it's kind of the other players and some of the fringe players on the bench that would get moved around quite a bit. So I haven't done it on the actual FPL page yet. There's not really any need. I'm just tinkering around anyway, but that's what the draft looks like right now. Let me know in the comments below what you think about it. If you enjoyed it, give it a like. Make sure you hit that subscribe button as well. There will be more FPL content over the break, but obviously that will be kind of tied in together with World Cup fantasy content too. So if you're waiting for the next World Cup video, hopefully it'll be in the next couple of days, and there'll be plenty more up until match day 1 and then throughout the tournament as well. But there'll also be some FPL stuff thrown in along the way. Hopefully you enjoyed that. Give it a like, hit subscribe, and I'll catch you again soon.